Hey, hope you guys can hear me okay. I'm wearing my Led Zeppelin t-shirt because I like Led Zeppelin. And yeah, a guy even stopped me and said, cool shirt day. And I thought that was kind of cool. I need a new one. It's getting holy, and I don't mean it's found religion. But anywho, I was thinking today about dynamics, interpersonal dynamics. In particular, how things can occur. There's my hand again. Yeah, clearly I'm doing this old school today. All right. It's rather impromptu, but I was thinking about those dynamics. Now, things always change as you get older. And lately, I've been kind of focused more about that. I don't know if it's because I'm thinking about my own mortality, how my sexy ass will be remembered. I'm not sure. I don't know what the deal is. Believe it or not, I'm not one for attention, despite the fact that I seem to get a lot of it with this channel. Which reminds me, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the Unemployable Counselor on YouTube. And there's a double whammy on Facebook. The Unemployable Counselor, Corey Rennie, myself, and the Boreal Chameleon. That's a good group. I think you'll like it. It's fun. It's exciting. It's got some cool shit in it. And we're $2.99, so we need one more for $300, and that could be you. Okay. So this is what I'm thinking about today. I was thinking about how things work, right? Or even like just how life is in general, the people we have, relationships we had when we were younger, we don't necessarily have when we're older, whether it's friends, family, whatever. Sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for not good reasons, and sometimes just indifference, right? But it also ties back to something that I like to talk to my clients about when I do see clients, because even though I'm the unemployable counselor, I am very much employable these days. I think about, you can't control what other people do. You can't control what other people say, right? But you can control how you react to that. And I've said that before in a couple of videos. You should really check them out on the channel because they're pretty good, right? But just how that look. But even when you decide that you change, or when you change, right? And when things aren't like they were before because you're different, nobody else, you've decided to change, or you think that some things are unacceptable, right? Maybe you're teased a lot, and then when you decide that you don't want to be teased anymore or treated a certain way, and you say, we're not doing this anymore. We've all been in this situation. What happens? Do the people accept that and say, hey, you know what? You're right. I shouldn't do that. I'm sorry. No. They usually double down, and they usually get upset because they can't do that anymore because you no longer allow them to do it. And I find that's the biggest issue, personally, I think anyways, where all of a sudden when things change and people might accuse you of shit, people might, they'll do whatever they can because, especially if there's some, I don't know, like you can't get in other people's heads, but just from an outsider looking at different situations that I've seen in my practice and all that kind of stuff, I do think that some people have an opinion in their head that they're always better than something else. For example, okay, so if I'm better than you, and then all of a sudden you're standing up to me, well, am I going to accept that? No, because I'm better than you. And the whole way we've been rolling this is you're subservient to me. You answer to me, right? I'm not talking about jobs. It could be friends, family, marriages, whatever. But the minute that changes, and it changes because the person who is usually the one who is at the crux of it, basically, people would say the root of all the problems, right? And they're pointing that finger. The minute that changes is done, because people have ups and downs in life. And sometimes, and you always know it, because if you're okay and you're having people call you and ask you to help, maybe, I don't know, with whatever, right? It's like, hey, someone's struggling, can you talk to them? Or, hey, I thought they might like talk to you. Oh, this is going on. What do you think we should do? But the minute you need help, they're not there for that, right? Maybe you're taking care of a sick loved one. Maybe you're, got a pet that's ill, right? Or I don't know, maybe you lose a job or change of life or menopause, whatever, right? You start to see where it's like, wait a minute, in those moments when I needed help, I was alone. And especially if it's people that you would think would be there to help. And I mean, people get changed as they get older, and that's the issue. When you change for something when someone doesn't want you to be different because they like the arrangement that they have, it's not going to go. And you already can see, because once you're removed from that situation, usually people end up eating themselves, or someone kind of fits that role. It's always a leader and a follower there, right? People can say that they're doing the right thing, but most of the time I find it's about the perception of what it is, right? You can be a scumbag, but as long as people think you're not a scumbag, then it's okay, right? I've seen that a lot. And I'm not saying I've never been one of those people. I'm sure I have. But as you get old, like with me, I'm getting older. And I mean, like, I had a divorce. I had things happen, last 10 years even. That's kind of altered my perception of exactly what it is and why I thought of myself in a certain way. And when I stopped thinking of myself that, and when things got it really to a dark point, right? And then was like, look, this has to happen now, right? Or you're doing more than you probably should and stretching yourself too thin. And when other life factors come up, that delicate balance, right? All those plates that you're spinning, right? On the Ed Sullivan Show, all of a sudden they can't all stay up anymore. And why is that? Because no one should have to do that, right? But we put ourselves in those positions. I always, I've had jobs where I've talked to people and said, man, codependency is a killer. And I would check that with people, right? And the reason why I can pick that out is because that was a big part of my life, right? It was a thought process. You think a certain thing from a young age. It's almost like you're, I think too, a lot of stuff with people is you get conditioned to do certain things. And I think more about the generational gaps between stuff, right? Where it's like, okay, if this is like it is, I don't think this is on this, but everyone else is saying it is, well, then they must be right. You start to not trust yourself and you're viewing it. Instead, you start looking at, well, what do I need to do to make this better? Oh my gosh, I need to do this because I need them, or I need this, or I need that fucking whatever, right? You start to look at things in that vein, in that light, and you lose yourself because you're fighting for something that you'll never get. And a lot of times it's just respect or common decency, right? And you'd be surprised how many clients I see throughout my whole career that have talked about these sorts of things. And I know too, it's like, man, on the job, it's different. If you're working, again, especially my line of work, if you're working with someone for a long period of time and there's no movement there, who's that helping, right? If I leave and they're threatening to jump off a building or something, that's not building a therapeutic relationship. That's fostering dependence. And that's not a good thing for people in my line of work. It's not. People might argue about that. I'm not saying you can't have compassion. I'm not saying you can't care about people. But I'm saying you got to have some sort of boundary. Otherwise, it'll eat you alive. And that happens in all kinds of relationships. So let's go back for a minute to what I was saying. Oh, there's my hand again. Let's go back for a minute to what I was saying about, just even about treatment of people, right? Because even if a situation, doesn't matter what happens, there's always going to be a reason why. I think a lot of it goes with, there's always resentment. There's always, guilt, maybe, right? Maybe something happened to those other people that forces them to be like, no, you need to kneel, right? That kind of stuff. And I never really understood that because I think I'm a child of Aquarius. I don't know, man. I think I'm more of a hippie child than I realized, but I'm starting to realize, look, man, I know what I want, what I don't. And my marriage ending was one part of it, right? And then it's like you start to see things kind of in a different light, especially, just life in general. Things come up and things change. I always used to say that, things would like break up like an iceberg and things go their separate ways. I believe that to be true. I think in order to be healthy and strong, you have to do those things. If you keep rooted in the past, right, you can't forget the past. It shapes us, but everyone remembers it differently, right? Especially maybe, if I think a lot of times people are just unhappy, so they gotta project that onto something else, that's the reason why they're unhappy. Oh, my life would have been great if, I would have won, I don't know, if I would have gassed up yesterday, my life would be better today. Or if you weren't born, my life would be better now. That kind of shit. And you hear that stuff. People have said that stuff, hurtful things designed just to hurt because they're hurting, and hurt people. So I look at it. And I think that as, I'm a firm believer that a lot of things, I think, go back to, there's family of origin, there's environmental, there's a lot of genetic factors, like psychological. You can go on and down the list, but I think a lot of times people will cope with things instead of just fixing it so they don't have to deal with it anymore. That's something that I've been in management before, it's something I always like to do, but then I got to a point where I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to deal with that anymore. And it was just like you become disenchanted with what's going on, and it unrolls and unfolds, it was loud, in a way that kind of cements that. If you're not wanted, don't hang around. Or if you're hanging around just to be someone's doormat, why are you doing that? If someone's making fun of you every day, is that playful teasing? Or is there something deeper there, right? Do they make fun of your kids, your dog? You know what I mean? Anything like that, it doesn't matter because it's never going to be good enough. So you're fighting for something that you're never going to get. And until you realize that, you're always being caught in that cycle. People are always being pointing the fingers and oh, it's because of this, without taking any responsibility themselves, right? Or they make veiled threats, right? I don't know, maybe they're calling you on to fight and then lying about it, shit like that. There's stuff that happens in life, and that's just like one example I heard from a client this week, and some people are so narcissistic, they think no matter what you're saying, it's about them because they can't differentiate themselves from an event. So again, with that codependency, I have to be liked. Everyone has to think that I'm perfect. So for me to have that, you're a villain. You're a bad guy, right? That's how that stuff kind of works. And I'm not, like I said, I don't consider myself a smart man, right? I might have a little book learning, but I do think that when you just, and this is what I tell my clients, when you change, it's like when people are alcoholics and they stop drinking and they get treatment and they start to go in recovery, they typically don't hang out with the same crowd they did before, right? And a lot of times even that crowd will either try to tempt them back into the fold because they liked what that brought. With you different, it changes that dynamic and it's not the same. They don't like that. See what I mean? That's the way I look at this. And I think regardless of the relationship that happens at work, it happens with family, it happens with friends, spouses, whatever. Those things can happen. The minute you decide that you deserve something more than what's being provided, maybe you're accused of something that you didn't do. Maybe you're, maybe people that, I don't know, maybe people that should have helped but didn't. I don't know. There's all kinds of reasons for people to act like they do. And I'm not trying to jump in and get in anybody's head. I'm just looking at it from my perspective. And I've always kind of been like that. I think, like I said, I'm more of a child of the 80s and 90s. And sometimes I think, just even some of the experience you have with work or friends or whatever, you kind of learn from that. And sometimes I've always been a late bloomer. So for me, it takes me a long time to wake up and kind of realize things sometimes. And I think sometimes that gets taken advantage of because you always want to try to do right by people. And you always try to, when your codependency is high, you try to please people just because you feel you need that approval to be accepted. So you need to do what's said. And you don't. Right? I made a comment to a friend of mine. It's like, man, you hold the keys to your own prison. You just don't realize it. Because you've been conditioned not to. And the thought process around it is you deserve whatever it is you're getting because you're not good enough. And that's not true either. You are good enough. The people that are pointing out the flaws or pointing things out that they want done, I think a lot of it is projection, right? People lie, people cheat, people steal, people do stuff that's not above board. but they do it anyway. So, like, why is that? If you know something, wrong is wrong, even if it helps you. It's my favorite Popeye line, right? A quote from Popeye the Sailor for our younger viewers. I don't know. Now I'm just kind of rambling a little bit and talking about this, but that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. And if there's any takeaways from this, it's not only are you good enough, not only are you just fine as you are, if you're making changes and other people don't like them, you need them around. If you're bettering yourself, or your attitude's changing, or your self-worth has improved, and you're not so willing to be a doormat, the people that are wiping their feet aren't going to be very appreciative of that, are they? Probably not. So it's just that's some food for thought, because I'm thinking too, it's like I've talked a lot about middle-aged men and relationships and health and all that kind of stuff. But the one thing that I think doesn't get talked about enough is how we view ourselves and why we view ourselves that way. Pretty deep for a Saturday night, man. I'm coming in at 16 minutes. But just food for thought. And maybe I just needed to vent that out to the public. But I'm thinking more and more about those kind of things. And I mean, even where I am in life right now, I'm pretty content. It took me a long time to get there, and I still struggle. Like I said, I'm not the richest guy in the world. I'm not that kind of stuff. But I mean, I don't believe in having a lot of things. My kids are happy and healthy. My dog is good. My mom's good. Then everything should be right with the world, right? You don't wish anyone ill will, because you shouldn't. You should hope everyone has a long and healthy, happy life. And if they're unhappy, you hope they find a way to get happy, because all that's doing is hurting them, not you. So if you decided to make some changes, or you had life circumstances that forced the hand a few times, and you're in some unfavorable positions, you can't get out of it. You can't see it. But you got to do the hard work, and you got to go through it. And sometimes it sucks, because sometimes you get dragged through the mud, you get kicked, you get called everything in the sun, you get disowned. I don't care, whatever it is, you know what I mean? No one will take your refill at 7-Eleven. I don't know. But that's just how we are now. And I mean, I think that turning the page is the best thing anyone can do. Because ultimately, you go to your house at night, no one else's. So why should you be worried about what other people think, right? If you're grieving, do what you need to do to grieve, but don't let it define you. If you're depressed, do what you need to do. Don't let it define you, right? Everybody, we're all beautiful people, man. We just have to see it for ourselves and know that just because we don't like someone doesn't mean that they need to crawl in a hole and die and never be seen again. You can just not like someone and be like, okay, we're done. Why give them any power over you by making them a specter over your life, right? If people are checking out your stuff that don't like you just to bitch about it, or just to do whatever, just to be like, ugh, let them. Because all they're seeing is how awesome you are. That's it. And if they're unhappy and they're in a situation they don't want to be in, but they feel they can't leave or whatever, because what might people think? Who gives a shit? That's not your problem. That's theirs. That's the way I look at it. And I'm Corey Rennie, the Unemployable Counselor. And again, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, share. I appreciate this on YouTube. Boreal Chameleon, the Unemployable Counselor on Facebook. We're a tag team, and you'll be glad you joined that. Have a great night. Thursday night videos, I think it's my jam. We'll catch you later on the flip side, and if you're unhappy, change it. Not everything is someone else's fault. Sometimes you need to look at your responsibility, because you might have played a small part in how things turned out. All right. Enjoy your summer, everybody. And no more thumbs shots. Have a good night.